Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Monsi, and in today's video I'm going to be going over all the books that I read in December. In total, I ended up reading 6 books, which I feel like is pretty average for me. And my reading month as a whole was okay. I didn't have any 5 stars, but I also didn't have any books that I hated. I had one book that I really didn't like, but I wouldn't say that I loathed it. So yeah, it was just a pretty average reading month, which happens. It's fine. We're fine. To start out the month, I read Confessions by Kanai Minato, translated by Steven Snyder. I had the physical copy, but I already returned it to the library. And this book is kind of like a mystery thriller. It is very short, but the chapters are really long. And in the first chapter, it's narrated by this middle school teacher who sits down her class for her final lecture before she is going to retire. And she's kind of talking to them about her life and how she got to be where she is. And she's talking about her family, and she brings up her 4-year-old daughter who recently passed away. And then she goes on to say to the classroom that she knows 2 of the students in front of her are responsible for killing her daughter, which is such a unique premise and so intriguing, so interesting. For me, the first chapter was 5 out of 5 stars. It was so good. It ends with a plot twist, but I feel like the plot twist didn't necessarily beg for more. Like, the plot twist just kind of wrapped everything up and was very satisfying as an ending, but it didn't leave you on a cliffhanger, so you weren't, you just like weren't craving more of the story necessarily. Like, I wasn't craving more of the story. I felt like the first chapter was just so amazing as a standalone and should have just been written as a short story. Because then what happens is, for the next 4 chapters, we're getting different POVs of the same exact story that we've already been told. So it just gets really repetitive, and I had a really hard time moving through the middle of this book. And then at the very end, it again ends on this just like absolute banger of a plot twist, and it was so fantastic and really worth reading the book just to like find out how it ends in the 6th chapter. But yeah, I don't know, it's hard for me to give this book a rating because the start of it was 5 out of 5 and the ending was 5 out of 5, and then the middle was just so boring and repetitive. And boring might be a little too much, but it just wasn't as captivating as the start of the book. I don't know, if you are looking for just like a different style of thriller, then I would definitely pick this up. I don't think you're gonna be disappointed, but yeah, maybe just be prepared to hear the same story over and over. And to be fair, a lot of people put this on their like favorite book of the year, favorite books of the year lists. So you might end up loving it, and I do think it's a good book. Also, I forgot to mention that this month I read 6 books, and 4 of those books were on my December TBR. So I'm actually pretty proud of that. I tried to pick as many books from my TBR as I could. Technically, I didn't read any from my personal TBR on this shelf, but I'm gonna work on that. Okay, the second book that I ended up reading was an audiobook. I listened to The Woman in Me by Britney Spears, which is her memoir. It was probably my favorite read of this month, or it comes in a close second, I don't really know, but I thought it was really well done. I'm not a huge Britney fan. I'm not a fan of hers, or I'm not against her in any kind of way, but I never grew up listening to her. I just have seen this memoir floating around, and I love memoirs, so I decided to pick it up, and I'm really happy that I did. It was really interesting to hear her story and really eye-opening to hear her take on how women in the spotlight are portrayed in the media versus their male counterparts who are either, making the same errors as these women, if you even want to call them errors, but they're doing the same things as these women that are in the spotlight, and they're just treated so differently based on their gender. And we really see that when Brittany talks about her relationship with Justin Timberlake. That infuriated me. There's also this interview that she alludes to in her memoir that she had with Diane Sawyer back in, I think, like 2002. And I went and I watched that interview, and I was so appalled by what I saw. So if you're feeling like you want to be outraged about something as a woman, go watch that interview, because it's just so messed up. It's so messed up. Anyway, I'm glad that Brittany got to share her side of the story when it comes to the conservatorship and all of that. And I would probably give this memoir a 4 out of 5 stars. I've definitely read more impactful memoirs and some really like beautifully written ones as well that exceed this memoir in my mind, but I did think it was good and worth the read. The next book that I read was How High We Go in the Dark. This was another book that was on my December TBR. And this book is basically like a collection of short stories where Earth is just in the throes of climate change and the polar ice caps are melting. And by way of them melting, this deadly virus is re-exposed to the world. And in each of these stories, we get to see how our society and how individuals cope with the aftermath of this contagion being unleashed into the world. So the stories can be very granular and really discuss or explore how individuals are handling their own particular situations when it comes to dealing with this virus. Or the stories are a bit more broad and taking a look at systems that are being put in place to deal with the devastation, or like research that is being conducted, that sort of thing. The first 4 stories got me so hard. They were all 5 out of 5 stars for me. I was so impressed with how the author was able to make me feel very emotionally invested in some of the characters in just like a short few pages, when there are books that I've read that are like hundreds of pages long and I never feel that attached to characters. So I really loved that aspect of the storytelling at the start of the book. However, the second half of the book, I don't know, the stories just didn't pack as emotional of a punch for me. They just, I don't know what it was, but they didn't hit me as hard. And what I really wanted was to hear more about the characters in those first 4 stories than get introduced to new characters in the second half of the book. So I don't know, it was like we got all of these different perspectives, and I was wondering the whole time if maybe for me the book would have been strengthened as a whole if we just focused on a few perspectives and really elaborated on those stories and what ended up happening to those characters, because I just really wanted to know where they ended up. The stories are all also like pretty loosely connected with one another, and I feel like if I reread the book, I would be able to pick up more on how each of the stories are connected, because some of them felt just like completely unrelated, but I know that they weren't. And so I feel like I would be able to like piece it all together in my head if I reread the book. This book was very heavy. It deals a lot with loss and grief, trauma. There is a lot of death in the book, and it's a lot, particularly coming off our own pandemic, which I don't even know if we're coming off of it. There are so many people right now that are dealing with COVID. But at the end of the day, despite its heaviness, I really did enjoy this read. And so this was probably one of my top reads of the month as well. The next book I read or I should say that I listened to, is Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. I have decided that for me, audiobooks are easier for me to comprehend when it's more like nonfiction or like a memoir type of story. So I had one Audible credit left, and this is what I decided to read. I have had kind of a hard year, and so I am really working on cultivating a more monk-like mindset. So I thought this would be a good book for me to listen to remind me how to think more positively and be more mindful and just be more at peace in general. And for what I was looking for, this book did check the boxes off. That being said, it wasn't like the most enlightening thing I've ever read. It didn't really tell me anything new or teach me anything that I haven't learned before, but it did remind me of things that I needed to be reminded of. And for that reason, I did enjoy listening to it. Generally, self-help books for me are never going to be a 4 or 5 stars, so I feel bad ranking this book. All I can say is that it did what it set out to do, and it was helpful for me. And if you also need these kinds of reminders in your life, then it might be worth picking up. After Think Like a Monk, I have the physical copy, On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. I thought that I was gonna fly through this book because it's so short, but I really had to sit with it and sit with different passages for longer than I expected. This book is basically a long letter from a Vietnamese American son to his illiterate mother. So he's writing this letter to his mom that he knows she's never going to be able to read. This is one of the most poetic, lyrical reads that I have ever come into contact with. There were sentences that stunned me truly. In this book, Vuong touches on so many different topics. He talks about PTSD and sexuality, racism, mental health, and the opioid epidemic. Like, he covers a wide array of topics. The book is essentially a collection of moments and memories that the narrator has with both his mom and his grandma, and they're also sort of like retellings of their stories with their experiences in the Vietnam War. Some of the writing in here, some of the points that he makes really resonated with me on a personal level. There was this one part in the book where the narrator's mom tells him as they're leaving their home, "Don't draw any attention to yourself. You're already Vietnamese." And that one got to me because, not to get too personal, but I have had that exact same thought so many times in my life where I'm just thinking, like, don't draw any extra attention to yourself than is already placed on you just based off of how you look. Anyway, there were just parts like that that really felt super relatable to me, and might not feel relatable to everyone who picks this up. I think the biggest issue for me with this book that I ran into was just that it was way more focused on the writing. Like, the writing was so epic, and it was way less about the storytelling. And I am into reading for the storytelling. That is my primary motive for reading books. So that's just a personal preference. I felt like this book was a little too abstract for me, but of course, like, it was still really, really well done. And I think ultimately I would probably give it like a 3.5 or a 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, and then my last book, my 6th book, my final book that I read this month, or this past month, was my least favorite read of the month, and that is Bunny by Mona Awad. No. I knew going into this that this was going to be a polarizing read, so I was either going to love it or I was going to hate it, and I was really, really hoping that I was going to love it, but I just didn't. I just did not like it. I did think that there was really great writing in this book. Like, Mona Awad is so descriptive that you can just vividly imagine everything that she's detailing in the book. But other than that, I just didn't like the story. I just don't like weird shit going on for no reason. And I'm sure there is a reason, but I didn't know what the reason was. So to me, it was just like, I don't know. Like, I'm not into the whole warped reality horror type of story. And yeah, for those of you who don't know, this book is basically about a scholarship student who is part of this MFA cohort, this writing cohort, and it's her and these 4 other girls and no one else. And the 4 girls are very cliquey and kind of have this like mean girls energy to them, and they all call each other Bunny. And one day they invite our main character, Samantha, to join them in one of these workshops that they perform, and shit just gets weird. It's just a weird book. It's just really weird, and I struggled to get through it. Like, I had to really push myself to finish it, and I hate that feeling. So I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. And that wraps up my December. I wish that I had ended it on a higher note in 2023, but it was kind of fitting for how my year went. So I'm gonna let that be in the past, and I'm gonna move forward to 2024. I have high hopes for January. It's actually January 5th right now when I'm filming this, and I've already read 2 books that I've absolutely loved. So we're off to a good start. I think 2024 is gonna be my year. And yeah, let me know down below what your favorite and least favorite book of December was, and if you agree or disagree with any of the reviews that I just went over, because I'd love to know. I think my next video is going to be going over my 2024 reading goals, which I'm super excited about. I love goal making, so that will be a really fun video to record and hopefully a fun video for you all to watch. And I think that's it, friends. I will see you in the next one. Bye.